Recording in progress. What is this one piece that is sticking out? This is also I have it like pinned up in the back. It's so 90s. I love it. Anyway, hi everybody. How are we doing? Hope you had a wonderful February. Oh, you know what? I need to plug in my microphone. 1 second. BRB. It's gonna say that every time. I hope this sounds better. Let's hope. I have had issues in the past with the microphone. I feel like, no, that's going to make me have good posture. Can't do that. I'm going to push my phone back this way. I'm going live in multiple different places. So I've got lots of cameras on me and I have people entering the waiting room. Hello, everybody. Hope you had a fabulous February. We are discussing our February book by the one and only Laura Norton, Lay Them to Rest. I'm very excited to discuss this. I really, really loved this book, and I hope other people did as well. I also had an amazing conversation with her for the podcast, which I'm sure by this point you guys are aware. There is a Morbidly Curious Book Club companion podcast where I chat with the authors. I had a really good conversation with Laura. She's phenomenal, and I hope you guys are able to tune in. It is available on pretty much all podcast platforms except for one or two that personally I have not heard of. Somebody did message me the other day and said they needed it on a site that I had not heard of. So I will add that. Just let me know. I will do it. My lips are disgustingly chapped. I have like the biggest glass of Chardonnay here with me tonight. Cheers, folks. Went to the Oddities Festival. I will talk more about that here in a bit. The Oddities and Curiosities Expo, excuse me. It was a wonderful time. I didn't buy any skulls. I'm actually shocked, proud of myself, shocked, and a little upset because I so badly want the skull of something on my wall. You know, it would really just tie the room together. So one day we will do that. But for now, we are going to discuss Lay Them to Rest. This is the On the Road with the Cold Case Investigators Who Identify the Nameless. So Laura Norton teamed up with a couple of different people to identify a woman known as Ina Jane Doe, who was found in the early 90s. And the story unravels from there. And this was a very perfectly executed book, in my opinion. It's very sad. It's very well done. It's very informative. I learned so much. I hope that people learned just as much as I did reading this book. And again, great conversation with the author if you are curious. I will also be going into detail about my cute little earrings, these little ghosties reading books from the one and only Midnight Narrative. My friend Sarah, local here, we did a collaboration. I'm sure you have seen at least one or two posts about it because you know what? I don't shut up about it. I'm obsessed with Sarah. I'm obsessed with her jewelry. We did a couple different pieces, but I will go into more detail during the book club. Here's one of my favorites, the rib cage and the shaky pelvic bone. You could shake its ass. My favorite. Anyway, I will be back. Welcome, welcome. If you're new here, hi. My name is Patches. I never introduce myself in these. I probably should, because if you were just now discovering my channel, you are probably dreadfully confused. I host the Morbidly Curious Book Club. We meet once a month towards the end of the month to discuss one book that is morbid and a little curious, all nonfiction. And I go live on TikTok and Instagram, so I'm looking at a couple of different places, but I will go more into that in a bit. I keep saying that, and I'll for real do this time. Okay. BRB. Recording in progress. So if you would wish not to show your face, you can hide your face by stopping your video. I record these just in case people cannot make it to the meeting and they would like to participate or hear the discussion. As you know, probably by this point, if you've been here for a little while, I do have children. They are cats and they scream and scratch at the door. I promise they're okay. They just want in, but there's a lot of expensive things in here, so I prefer them stay out. I love them dearly, but they don't need to come in here all the time. And they love to walk across the keyboard and you know how cats can be. I am live on TikTok and Instagram. I'm on Instagram over here and TikTok over here. So I see my face like 3 times and it's a little trippy. You guys don't have to speak. If you didn't finish the book, there will, of course, be some spoilers. But you do not have to participate if you do not want to. You can come and go as you please. It will not hurt my feelings. You can come right back in. I will admit you back in. I only do that because if I see somebody's name, that's actually a different topic. We can get into that later. But I just have that process set up so you guys don't have to remember codes and I can just admit you. So if you would like to leave and come back, you totally can, or take us to the bathroom with you. I don't care. Use the raising hand option. If you go down to the bottom next to show captions, there is reactions. I wonder how accurate the captions are. I've never noticed that. I want to try that one time. There's a raise hand option, and that puts you in a queue. And that, oh, let me see how that works. It'll put you in a queue. How this works, because we can't all be talking at once, I ask that everybody be muted, and then we will go one by one. It takes a good amount of time, but I would like to hear everybody's thoughts. Go one by one and share your thoughts on the book. Speak your truth. Let's stay on topic. Let's keep it rolling. I'd love to hear everything you have to say, but make sure that everybody else gets a chance to speak as well. There will be differing opinions. We've never had an issue with this, but I do have to say it. There will be differing opinions. Please be respectful. Please be nice. If there is ever a problem, we will figure it out as we go. Again, never had that issue. Hope we never do. You never know. You got to say it, though. The first hour, we discuss the book. And then the second hour, we have a palate cleanser because sometimes we end on a pretty somber note. So after this, at around 8 o'clock, 8:10 or so, we will jump into the palate cleanser hour where we turn off all the live, stop recording, and just chat. I would love to hear what you're reading, watching, listening to, etc., etc. There are ways to follow us. If you'd like to follow us on Instagram, that would be great. At the Morbidly Curious Book Club. We do have a website now, themorbidlycuriousbookclub.com, and that way you can find everything. I do want to show you something. If I could find it, that would be awesome. And of course I can't. Cool. Maybe I have to have it up. That is probably the case. God, that is bright. Okay. Somebody pointed out my earrings. And you know what? I'm so glad you said something. Let me also admit these people that have been just sitting, waiting. Where is the participants? Admit all. All right, here's our website. Now, this is mostly for mobiles, so it's a little slender. But this has everything on it, including the books that we're reading for the rest of the year. And I know, as you guys have probably seen, I did switch up a book. So we are changing our May book. This is also on our Instagram. So if you need to see this again, it's on our Discord, it's on our Instagram, it is everywhere. I do not advertise the Discord publicly. I have had issues with randos joining, and it has been bad. So I try and moderate the Discord as much as I can. If you would like to be a part of it, I will put it in the chat today, since you are obviously here and part of the book club. I will put it in the chat, or if you need it, DM me. Let's talk earrings. I already had a tab open. I didn't need to do that. So my lovely friend, Sarah, who's local to me here in North Carolina, Midnight Narrative, creates these absolutely gorgeous earrings. I love her dearly. She's so talented. These are cured clay polymer earrings. Okay. We did a collaboration. So if you go to her website, or go to her website from the Morbidly Curious Book Club's website, you could find book club and author collaborations. And I'm going to let you guess. I'm going to let you guess which ones are ours. They're not the dragons. So I'm currently wearing the book club member earrings, where it's a little ghosty reading a book. How cute is he? I think my favorites are the ribcage and dancing pelvic bone. You can make him shake his butt. I don't know why he's a he to me, but he's a he. We also have the death moth earrings, the death tarot cards, and we do have 2 necklaces. Now, something cool about these necklaces, I will show you the size. So the coffin's fairly small. The Morbidly Curious Book Club one is about twice the size. I hope you could see that. I'm not showing people on the lives, so sorry. Here are the necklaces, okay? As you see, one has a gold chain, one has a silver chain. You can select however you would like it. Let's do the coffin, for example. You can make it a gold necklace, a silver necklace, a hook earring, or a hoop. Now, the hoops are cool because they go through, they look like this. I hope the picture loads. They look like this. The death moth one is the one, I don't know, you can see my mouse. They go through gauged earrings. Obviously, the hooks don't do that, but the hoops do, We actually had somebody accidentally order a hoop and a hook when they needed two hoops. Just message Sarah or tell me, and I'll tell Sarah, and she can fix that right away for you. How exciting. I think she is so talented. I love these. I'm so excited to potentially do more with her in the future. And she also said that this was her biggest launch yet. You guys blew up her website purchasing these, which is amazing. And she's so grateful. If you are local in North Carolina, and down in Mooresville at Fred and June's in downtown Mooresville, here in Iredell County, they have them in store. I don't know how many they have left. I haven't called Steven and asked, but they apparently been selling very well. So I thank you guys so much for making this successful. That is awesome. Sarah is, of course, eternally grateful. So definitely get some. Another question we get about the earrings really quick is the weight. Now these look super heavy. This is, I think, 0.09 ounces. It's clay, so it's really light. The only thing that she asks you not to do is hop in the shower with these bad boys because they are clay. Be very careful with them. They're, of course, sturdy, but I guess with enough exertion, you could break it in half. I wouldn't suggest doing that, but be careful with them. I love them all. And yes, I'm wearing the ghosties tonight. Okay. I think that's it. Oh, what am I talking about? We have a podcast. Hi. Okay. So the Morbidly Curious Book Club now has a companion podcast, and I did get to chat with Laura Norton earlier this month. I think it was February 10th. I've had this book finished for a while. I hope I remember everything. Laura was great. Laura is so brilliant, and I had such a good time talking with her. Before we started recording, we actually were sitting there talking for like a half an hour because we were both familiar with people in the true crime space, and we were talking and chatting and discussing her podcast, The Fall Line and One Strange Thing. So if you would like to listen to her go into deeper discussion about the book and give updates, I would highly suggest checking out the podcast, and that is available wherever you get podcasts. And then next book, Pathogenesis, I am chatting with Jonathan Kennedy March 15th. So I got to get reading. Like now. I'm kind of nervous about that one. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like, I mean, Jonathan Kennedy's in the United Kingdom and he's like very, very smart. And I'm smart, but I'm not like, on that level of like professor smart. And he wrote a book about plagues and I'm really nervous. Anyway, let's get to talking about the book. Lay them to rest on the road with the cold case investigators who identify the nameless. Um, would love to hear your thoughts. I will go first. I loved this book. I thought it was really great. I learned so much. I gave it a 9 out of 10 on our book club's website, which you can do if you would like to give it a rating. I learned so much. It was so insightful. The end had me in tears. I did cry a little bit, not gonna lie, whenever they were talking about the press conference, which you can watch. I put that at the beginning of the podcast episode, actually, an audio clip from it. When they started talking about the press conference, I lost it. I thought this was superb. And I really love Dr. Amy Michael. I would love to meet her one day. Just everybody that she encountered, which is so cool. And I love how they do this process. Forensics and forensic anthropology has always just been so fascinating to me. So I knew that this was probably going to be a winner, and it definitely was. So if you loved it, I would love to hear it. If you didn't like it, tell me. I would love to hear that too. Do not be afraid to hold back the feels and exactly what you felt. Who would like to go first? Tell me what you thought. Megan.
I'm happy to go. I really loved this book, and I thought she did such a beautiful job at making sure to give us kind of the really, personal side of the case that she was looking at, but also giving all the statistics. Like, I thought she wove together the like very hard statistical facts. Like, when she was talking about Doe cases and Black women in 2020, and I just
Mhm.
uh, um, I can't remember what the other one is, like University of Berkeley that still has the indigenous remains. And she just like did such a good job of weaving through things like that while also showing you where we're moving forward, but the spots
Mhm.
that we still really need to. And I really appreciated the way that she did that.
Totally. Yeah, and there's a lot that still needs to be done. You know, there's a lot of kind. That's something I asked her to for the podcast episode was how can we move forward and be more respectful with some of the new, the things that we're discovering and the things that we should be more cautious about. And I did ask her about Mary, and the updates there. But yeah, I agree. I think this was really informative. And I learned so much. I think I told her too that I had just learned what odontology meant while reading this. Had no idea what that meant at all. Forensic or study of teeth. And apparently frogs can have teeth. Just kidding. Alex.
Hi everyone.
Hey.
Um, Unpopular opinion, did not love it.
Totally fine. Totally fine.
I feel comfortable now to say that. I would
Good.
never ever dump on a book. Like I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it also. Um, there were like the parts there were certain parts that I really, really enjoyed and loved and did get emotional reading, but there for me there was too much filler. She like mentioned twice about her keto diet and like what snacks she was eating and um like that kind of stuff. I found that I was like bored reading that kind of stuff. And then there was just too much. And then like I kind of found myself getting bored and then I wasn't paying attention really to like the stuff that she would say after that. Um so like throughout the book I had like conflicting feelings. I was like, do I like this? Do I not like this? I couldn't really make up my mind about it, to be honest. The cover is beautiful though. It really is. I listened to the podcast though a couple days ago when you posted. Amazing job, by the way. Loved it. And it kind of changed my mind about the book a little bit. Like it made me be like, okay, maybe I do like this more than I thought I did. Because she does go into detail about how she put like that stuff in there because her editor was like, give us more of you. And
Yeah.
I like how she explained that some authors like how she doesn't really like anyone, like she's very private, doesn't like to give a lot about herself, right? Um, I personally, when I'm reading nonfiction, I like just give me the facts. Like that's what I'm reading for. Like the drier, the better almost. Like
Yeah.
I want to know, I did learn a lot. I learned a lot in this book. Um, but she goes into detail talking about how her editor was like, put more of you in there. And so for me, it was too much. But I understand where she was coming from with that is because she was being told to give more of herself. So the reader has something to connect to or
Mhm.
someone to connect to. So I think you did an amazing job with the podcast because it really like a book that I did not love. Um, I kind of like maybe I should reread this, like give it a second chance because I think that I just maybe was like a little bit too hard on it. Um, but now that we're speaking with authors, like this is not a good time about me to be like honest. I'm like they're gonna be listening to
No,
all of
no.
our reviews and stuff and like
She said that in the episode too. She hasn't read a single review about her book.
and I think that's amazing because some people are ruthless.
Some
Like,
people are ruthless. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but the parts that I did like the fingerprinting thing, like somebody even said in the Discord, brought back a memory for me. I remember going to get fingerprinted and ID'd. I want to say in like a Kmart, like when those were still a thing. Um,
Oh
so I
God.
do remember that. And then like more on a serious note, like she brought up 9/11 and I know we've talked about 9/11 in the past here and she was talking about how they identified somebody by a single tooth that they found. So now the family has peace of mind just from that. Like they're not going to find anything else from this person but that one thing. And what else? I think she said that back in September 2022, like they were still identifying victims. And that I did not know, which I should have known because I feel like I've read so much about 9/11. But
All right.
yeah, so the parts that I liked, like I really, really loved. And then the other parts just kind of was like, get to the good stuff, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, the
So
in-between chapters were really informative and interesting, and then we would go back to like her going about, figuring out who Ina was, and then there was a little bit of a patient pacing issue for me at first, and then same thing, like once you start talking to the authors, it kind of changes things because you do hear, and I think that's going to become a point of topic too with Data Baby, because Data Baby was getting a lot of pushback from the editor apparently, based on stuff that Susanna, and that's our April book. Susanna Breslin was talking about like the editor was pushing for one thing, but she was trying to tell this other thing. And I don't think that was necessarily the case here with Lay Them to Rest, but it does seem like there was a lot of pushback to like talk about herself. And she's like, well, what do you want me to say? Like she was hesitant to tell me her birthday. Like she wouldn't even tell me
Yeah.
that.
Beep. Like
Yeah, yeah. And she finally did, which we're like best friends now. But anyway, yeah, and I understand that because I don't want people knowing certain things, of course, too, but like if you want your book done, I guess you gotta listen to your editor, you know. But I'm glad. No, I'm glad that it changed your mind a little bit, but I'm also glad that, you were honest. I love that, Alex. Thank you. Safe
thank you.
place here to do that. If any of you were here in the Hell in the Heartland discussion, oh boy, that was so much fun. That discussion lasted, I think, 2 hours because we were just, I liked it, I didn't like it. I liked it, I didn't like it. It was just back and forth and back and forth. So much fun. Such a good time. Britt. Hey, I know her. What's up, Britt?
Me, Brit, or the other Brit?
You, Britt, with your hand raised.
Well, both of them are raised.
Oh, which is the other Britt?
I
Oh,
don't know. Lowercase Brit.
the person right next
Oh,
to you?
you know,
Got it.
it's
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Britt that I know. I mean, I know
okay.
other Britt
Perfect.
too, but like Britt that I know in person. Jesus, this is
Yeah,
going
that we like were
great.
at dinner 2 nights
I'm
ago. Got it. Okay.
sweating. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually really liked this book. I gave it I only do 5 stars normally, so I did 4 out of 5. Um, so probably like an 8.5 or a 9 on your scale. I really liked that they went into the case and then the next chapter they went into the methods and the science behind it. There were times where I felt stupid reading it because I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. Um, but at the same time, I feel like she did a really good job with explaining the science, then explaining like that in real English for regular people. And then I also really, really liked that she kind of went through the Bones thing because Bones is one of my favorite TV shows of all time.
Yeah.
And I know logically that that's not how they do things, but that's the only way I know how they do things. Same things with like CSI and stuff. I know that that's not really how they do things
We
and
still
that
eat it
it
up.
takes forever. But exactly, we eat it up. So I really liked that she actually brought up Bones and was like, this is not how things are done. However, we do this, this, and this. And then I really loved that they actually found who she was.
Yeah.
Um, it breaks my heart that there's so many people out there that they still have no idea who they are. Because it breaks my heart for their families because they
Mhm.
still have no idea. Um, and then it broke my heart during the 9/11 thing as well because I had no idea they still hadn't identified people. Like, because in my mind, I mean, we all lived through that, which was still a crazy thing that it happened in our lifetime.
Mhm.
But for it to be how many years now? We're like, what, 23 years since it's happened, and they still don't have. I know, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel old because right there with you. Um, but that they still haven't found everybody because there's not a record of everybody who was there because of the visitors and everything like that. So that just kind of boggled my mind. Um, but I really ultimately really liked it. I felt like there were a few times that I did get lost in it. I agree with Alex where there were a couple times where I was like, okay, get to the point. Like, but overall, I really, really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, I always advertise this book club as 18 plus just because we read stuff in it. And you were like, we all lived through 9/11. So for a second here, I was like, did we? Mm,
oh yeah, we did.
we
We
definitely, we definitely did. If you're over
yeah,
18, you're here. Cool.
yeah, which is crazy.
That's the most somber mm, thing. Okay. Anyway, let's move on.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, and I actually just saw a video on TikTok, somewhat unrelated, but related to 9/11 on the topic, about the last known receipt. Did y'all see that video that was floating around on TikTok where a woman was like in the gift shops on the for like the first floor of the World Trade Center buying like a toy for her kid? and it's the date on it says 9/11/2001, and then it's like 8 minutes before something happened, either the tower, like something bad happened, either the tower collapsed or the second tower got hit. And she was like trying to purchase this thing, and the lady behind the counter was like, I think we're supposed to evacuate. And the woman was like, well, I'm here, I have cash, like I need to buy this for my daughter. And she sees like people running, and she's like so careless about it, to the point she's like, well, I have to buy this present for my daughter, and then got out of the building like just in time. I don't know, I probably shared that on the Discord, maybe not, I'll have to find it again, but it was mind-boggling that we still have that receipt, like they kept it. That's wild. um and I she mentioned somebody, and I was curious. She mentioned somebody that I wonder if they were mentioned. I meant to go look and What the Dead Know, because Barbara Butcher was working with victims and families on 9/11 as well. I wonder if there was any cross references. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll have to go back and look at that. Okay, Brit. Other Brits. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I might realize there was two, and I was like, oh, I don't know who should go first. I don't know whose hand was up first.
I realize it doesn't
But
like probably show you who's in the queue, but to
no,
like you guys are all in line. Okay, sorry.
yeah, no, you're good. Sorry, I'm unloading my car. I've been in the car.
You're good.
I had like the first probably third of the book, I kind of questioned like, am I gonna like this? It was very like at one point I wrote a note that was like, oh my gosh, there's so many acronyms, there's so many like organizations and all of that. Um, After I got through that and made a bunch of notes and put a bunch of stuff to memory, then I really got into it. I liked like the personal aspect of it. Um, and some of those personal details, like to me, that made it more relatable.
Hmm.
Not that like I do this for a living and I can relate to any of this, but I don't know. I'd say the first third, I thought I was not gonna like it, and then by the end, I loved it. And the thing that really stuck with me is the whole idea that we still don't have systems that communicate very well across state lines, like across the country. It's that's one of those things that like I knew, but I didn't know it was quite that bad. And that was very eye-opening with the statistics and how long it can take to close a case that way and just getting a match. So that was really eye-opening. And yeah, that's my big takeaway is I wish that those systems could improve, but I don't know what that will take.
Yeah, there was something interesting on the did anybody go look up the NamUs database and like look and see about Doe cases in your county? There's like only one in my county, which is interesting, one or two. But where are beans? I actually also got caught up on the acronyms as well. Um, there was some stuff that I definitely needed to go back and look for again. Let's see. I'm struggling. Oh, my glasses are right in front of me. Um, da-da-da. Oh, here we go. Only a few of the states, 16 states, have passed legislation mandating the use of NamUs, which is the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. So the only system that we do, only 16 states are required, they're mandated to actually use it. North Carolina is one of them. But it's just kind of weird to me that that isn't like a better system in place. Like I mean, even in Illinois, there was that one person that they found, the guy that was found in the body bag, and he wasn't in the system. And Laura was like, "Can I take this with me and learn more about this person?" I thought that was interesting. I had no idea that that was that limited. Um, but I'm glad you wound up really enjoying it. I love when that
Mhm,
happens. A lot of books start out that way for me, especially with book club books.
mhm.
Oh, please.
Yeah, I feel like there could be a whole other book just about the systems and like why they are failing and the politics behind it, the funding behind it. Like I'm sure that could be its whole story, on
Yeah,
its own.
absolutely. I would recommend a book that kind of goes into not not as eloquently, I would say, as Lay Them to Rest, but I did really like this other book, The Cold Vanish, specifically about people missing in the Pacific Northwest. That is a fantastic book. And I just purchased one called Trail of the Lost, which seems to have a similar vibe, but this book definitely made me want to read more about missing persons cases. Chloe. Hi.
Hi. So I agree with Alex on this book. I feel like I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but I did still like it. I think I gave it like a 7 out of 10, so I didn't hate it by any means. But there were just some things that I felt like I wanted to know more. Like there was so many cases that she like kind of put information in, and then it was just kind of like, oh, well, we don't know anything about it, so sorry. And I'm like, well, did we have to add that then? And then like
Yeah.
all the personal details about like her keto diet and all of that. I kind of felt myself skimming over those parts, but I thought it was really informative and I really liked it as a whole. Um, I think one thing that I was slightly disappointed in, which I know is kind of hard in a nonfiction book, I don't want to say it was anticlimactic necessarily, but it was when they found out her identity and she was just asleep and she was like, oh yeah, and I woke up and they found out who it was. I was like, okay, I guess it felt like it wasn't as impactful
Mm.
as it could have been, because it just kind of happened in passing. Um, but then no, I definitely got emotional during like the press conference part. Like after that, I really enjoyed all of that. It was just I felt like them actually finding out who she was could have been a little bit more, I don't know. I guess I don't want to say meaningful because it's not, that wasn't meaningful.
I get what
Maybe
you
impactful. Maybe impactful is the word I was looking for. One thing is the railroad killer. Apparently there was just a book released on him here recently, and I didn't know anybody had read that because like hearing about his cases, it
Yeah.
was like page 12 is when they kind of like briefly mentioned him when they were talking about the Dardine family
Oh, yeah,
murders.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought that that was really interesting, and I had put a book on my wish list from it a couple months ago, and I didn't know if anybody had any takeaways from that, I guess.
Yeah, the Dardine family is such an unfortunate one that
Oh
like
my
also
God, that
could have
one
had
was
its own
rough.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, those were all of my thoughts.
Yeah, I was that same part too where she was like, I fell asleep. I was like, how could you? Like I
Yes,
would be
I was like,
so
we did
full of
all of this
like
work.
I would be so stressed. Like I don't know if I'd be able to sleep, but I think she said in the podcast, she was like, I need my 9 hours, man. I'm trying to stay young or something like that. And she's like, the Redgraves always stay up late and I can't.
And it's like one of those things where it's like in a nonfiction book, you can't. I would rather her tell the truth of what happened if she
Sure.
fell asleep and she woke up than, embellishing it in any way. But
Right.
I kind of had that same thought of like, how could you fall asleep? Like,
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I get it though. There's been moments too, like such a grandma at heart. Like the second that it turns a certain hour, it's like I am useless.
oh yeah.
Don't ask me a single question. Um, yeah, I'm glad they figured out who it was ultimately. I mean that I didn't know. I was kind of disappointed when I was putting together the reading guide. I always look for a picture that goes on the background of like where there's like a blurred picture in the back. And I typed in the book and this woman's face, Susan's face was popping up and I'm like, "Oh man, I was kind of hoping I would figure that out as I went. Like I didn't want it to be spoiled. That I'm glad that they found out who it was, but at the same time, it was like, well, shoot, all right. I feel like it just so I knew it was coming, but I'm very happy they did. And we actually the Discord recently watched a documentary together. We do that. We've done that once. I've been trying to do it way more, where we hop on the voice chat and I stream Max and we watch a documentary together. And we watched They Call Him Mostly Harmless. Is that what it was called? Um, Yeah, and they had this guy's like they had him. They had the entirety of him. There were no missing. I mean, to think that they were able to find out, and again, same with the tooth from 9/11. Like the fact that they were able to figure out who this was just based on the skull and part of the vertebrae alone is remarkable because even they had the guy who he told everybody his name was mostly harmless. They had his whole body and they couldn't find him in a system ever. And of course, there's twists and turns with that. I really recommend that documentary. That was fantastic. But it made after watching that after reading this really just solidified how amazing forensics is and how brilliant these people are and how remarkable they were able to, how they were able to do all this. Amy.
Hi.
Hello.
On that note about the picture, I will say I don't love when a book has all of these photos that are right in the center because it totally give it away for me that, oh, they found out who she was. I think it's nicer to have the pictures like that you come across as you read. But anyways, I think I gave this like 3.5, 4-ish out of 5. I started off really strong and busted through like the first 100 pages. And then after that, it was like every other chapter kind of slowed down for me. I feel like I still don't know what genetic genealogy is. I didn't get a very good sense of it. I did, it actually totally brought out a memory for me where I'm an artist, and one of the many things that I wanted to be as a kid was a forensic artist. And I loved that chapter. I almost bought the book that they talked about
Oh
just
yeah.
because I want a book on forensic art. So
Yeah.
that was fun to remember that.
That's so much pressure. Like I couldn't imagine having to
I'm
figure that
reading
out.
through it and I'm like, I'm kind of glad I didn't on that route because
Yeah.
I'm like so self-conscious of like how I do work, and if someone gives me feedback, I'm like, oh my God, I should have thought of that. I should have done it better. Like, I don't think I could handle it.
No, I couldn't. And there's been some different artwork and molds and things done of Ina Jane Doe that have not been as accurate. And I don't know if you guys have checked out the Reddit page. I think well, there's a couple of Reddit pages for Ina Jane Doe, and now I think there's a couple of Reddit pages for the homicide, of course, because this was just part one. I mean, figuring out who it was part one. Now figuring out, who killed her is where we are from here. So there's, justice for Susan. And it's like on one of those unsolved mysteries Reddit threads where people are talking about, this Ina Jane Doe was finally solved, and somebody in the comments was like, oh gosh, was that the one with the really creepy like art done of her? Not the one that Carl did in here. Um, yeah, Carl. Not this one, but there was another one where people were like, "Oh God," because I think something that really threw them off was, correct me if I'm wrong, the torticollis. They thought that her face was going to be much more asymmetrical than it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was very slight with the bone structure itself, but they didn't know how that was going to actually like relay on the face. And apparently it really didn't relay that much on the face.
It
Like when you
got
look
me
at Susan.
thinking about my own body because I have
I
scoliosis.
know.
So I've had 2 Harrington rod surgeries. So I'm like,
Oh,
if it was just from my shoulders up, would they see some of that crookedness and what would they think my stance would be? Because my
right.
shoulders and my hips are a little off, but it's not like dramatic. I don't have a hump going on or anything, but I'm like, what would my forensic art look like? The
Yeah.
morbid thought, but like you have to wonder. Or my
No, we
husband
talked about
talks
that
about
too.
how when he was in the military, they strip them down completely. And you have these guys going down the line and they mark down every single scar and freckle and mole and gray hair because if something happens to the military guy,
You
you
want
need to
to
be able to identify some
identify.
part of his body.
Wow. Wow, they would have a fucking field day with the freckles that I have. Oh my God. Um, yeah, I thought about that too. And Laura and I were speaking about that because there was that great line from Amy that Dr. Amy Michaels said. She was like, wow, I can't wait to see your bones or something like that. Like, I wonder what you look like. And Laura and I were both like, what's it like to live a normal life and not think about these kinds of things as you're walking around? Like, would they notice? Like, would they see these kind of things? Like, what, uh, I recently found out that I have a rogue staple wandering around in my body that I don't know if I had told anybody about. Like if they had, I'd be like, she had a random staple hanging out. Like I just recently found that out because I had an X-ray done. And the chiropractor was like, what is this? And I'm like, what do you think? I put that there? I don't know what that is, and apparently it's from my appendix surgery. Anyway, the things you find out when you do weird stuff to your. But anyway, let's move on. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Becky, I missed your face. I gotta be honest. Becky, I'm so happy to see you here. I hope you've been doing
Hi.
well. What's going
Well, it
on?
almost didn't happen because we had a power outage for most of the afternoon, but here I am.
Is it pouring? Is it raining? What's happening?
Wind,
Oh,
wind. Um, so one of the things I wrote down was it's very annoying when you have young children and the power goes out. And so I probably won't ever do this, but I put it on my list after they go to bed to look up like, how much is it to have a generator? Is that silly?
no.
But we get windstorms enough here that it's a thing. We lose our power. So anyway, full disclosure, I am not done with the book. I have been reading all day since there's no power. So I'm like 35% through it or so. I'm really enjoying it. Laura is, obviously it's her career, but she's obviously a writer. And I think that for me, that's kind of how I prefer my nonfiction to be.
Right.
So I was actually kind of comparing this book to, is it We Carry Their Bones?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who
That is very similar.
She talks about that author in this book too. Erin Kimberly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she does. Oh, shit.
Yeah. And how dry I found that book.
Yeah.
Right? Because scientists obviously can write, but it's a different kind of writing.
Sure.
And I'm a scientist myself. I'm an engineer. And it's just I kind of enjoyed I rolled my eyes at keto, not to offend anyone, but I was like, who cares? But like the little she was talking about like her grandma modifying baby doll dresses for her and how she had like low knees and how that's actually like because she's getting most of her height from having longer than normal femur bones. And we're just so like we have so many similarities, yet we're so varied.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really fascinating. So I always, whenever I read a book like this, think I missed my calling and I should have gone into forensic science in some way, because hanging out in a lab and just doing my own thing sounds incredible. But also I'm, incredibly, I don't know if I could deal with the emotional part of it.
Yeah.
Because I think someone said earlier, like it is really heartbreaking to think that there are people that we just probably might never know who they are. And like, no one is throwaway. No one. And so I find that to be very upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about my own life and when I feel alone. And then I'm actually, well, like, no, I mean, I have people, if I went missing, someone would know.
Yeah.
Right. And to think about how sad it is that I don't know. It's just very sad. And sometimes then I get kind of down the rabbit hole of like, and we're just getting farther and farther apart. Like we're not. And so I find it very heartening that science is still connecting us and bringing us together and reminding us of our humanity. So I'm really enjoying that part. I also had like a memory of going to Shopko and getting fingerprinted and my mom having like a little ID card for me and my sister.
Yeah.
And also like then I just started thinking about like what a weird time.
Yeah.
Also going to the hospital to have our Halloween candy x-rayed. So like the 80s and 90s were just wild. They were wild.
What?
And so I think the other really cool thing, which I sort of knew this in the back of my mind, but when she was talking early on in the book about DNA and how, in the 80s and early 90s, we didn't really have that. And how it wasn't really until like 93, 94 when like the first like DNA started to actually be used. And I would just kind of had this like, I was like 14 before there was DNA like used for this kind of thing, right? It just shows you how quickly like things are advancing. And this whole like I always mess it up, but like the genealogical DNA and stuff. I just find it so fascinating. So anyways, I'm sort of rambling now, but
No, you're fine.
I'm really enjoying the book so far. I didn't pick up on the fact when you made the list or whatever that she was the from the fall line, because I've listened to that podcast in the past, but I haven't for a while. Because did they used to be part of Exactly Right, and then I think they're not anymore?
I don't know.
I found out about them through My Favorite Murder in the first place,
Okay.
but I think they've
So,
parted ways.
I don't know.
If there was any connection, there's been a parting. But anyways, so I think I'll go back and visit that, because one of the I was a little annoyed in the very beginning because it felt like she was stepping around how race plays into this. I was like, just say we're not looking for these people because they're Black. Just say it. We all know it. It's okay. Just say it. And she just kind of tiptoed around it in the beginning. So I was a little annoyed, but then she finally did say it. So,
right.
But so anyways, I'm really enjoying it so far. And I already knew that they like found out who she was and everything. So I just am okay. Sorry, there's a cat outside. Looking forward to just hearing the rest of how they get to that.
Yeah.
And everything. Cause all the science is I love it. It's very nerdy, but it's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I went to Western Carolina here in North Carolina, and it's one of the handful of schools in the country that has a body farm.
yeah.
And why I didn't study forensic science. Listen, I'm not a person I don't have regrets. But if I were to pick one, if I were to pick just one, it would be not studying forensic science at Western Carolina.
I just have so much respect for people who do this, because as much as I say, oh, I miss my calling and I should have done that or whatever, like I couldn't go and see bodies. I couldn't, like, I actually probably can't handle that. And so I just have a lot of respect for the people that can and do. And
and that's what I loved about Dr. Amy Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. She always referred to the skull as Ina. It was never like the skull, or it was never like it was never
the head
body part, the head. Yeah, it was always Ina, always very respectful with it. And I don't know if you're at the part where they finally go and see Mary, which is the mummy found at the university.
Not yet.
Okay.
But keep going.
So they obviously go see her, and whoever, and Laura goes into this in the podcast too, where she said this was clearly done by a male. Whatever they put on, the resin that they put on this person's bones has pretty much halted any sort of DNA evidence they can find. They cannot identify who this person is. But also annoying. There was like a rod, pretty much just like she was essentially like a skeleton in the corner of a classroom, but it was a person.
Okay.
And there's a rod just going straight up her body. And there's a part where Amy's like staring at her and they're about to leave. And Laura's like, do you need anything else? And Amy's like, I just can't leave her like this. And that part also got me, where I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Hate people.
Yeah. It's also definitely making me feel like I've started, and like I start things and then I stop them because ADHD, of like, if something were to happen to me, like I should maybe have like like I broke my arm and I have this tattoo. It just makes you think about like if something were to happen, even not a homicide, but if something were to happen to me, I'm in a ditch or something somewhere. How would they figure out it was me?
Yeah. I mean, I have tattoos that my parents don't know about. So if they would find something, they wouldn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I really am enjoying Amy. She seems like a really cool, like you said, you'd love to meet her. Like, she seems like a really cool person, and just what she does, I think, is amazing.
Yeah.
So, someone's crying. I better be done.
I don't have any memory of getting fingerprinted. I asked my I actually was going to put this in the podcast episode, but it was already almost 2 hours, so I didn't, but it was pretty funny. I called my mom and then I called my dad asking them if they ever had me fingerprinted, and both of their responses were hilarious. So I might put them in the Discord or something. My mom was like, "Ooh, I don't remember that." She was like, "I remember when I was in school, the dentist would come by and check our eyes, and our dentist and optometrist would come by and check our teeth and our eyes and kind of see like, what's going on and making sure that we are like taken care of at home. And we are, we don't have any underlying issues." And I asked my dad, and he was like, "Well, you told a dirty joke one time and got in trouble." And I was like, "No, I wouldn't get fingerprinted because I was in trouble, Dad. I was getting fingerprinted because there was like laws in place." And like apparently, I think it was, I can't remember which president. Was it Nixon? That was like implementing these like laws to have like these kids put on like a database or whatever. And he was like, "Oh," he's like, "No, I don't remember that." I'm like, "All right, thank you, Dad. Really helpful." It's not because I was in trouble. Why would I get fingerprinted in elementary school if I'm in trouble? Stupid.
You delinquent.
No. And then he proceeded to remind me what the dirty joke was, but apparently it like made the entire staff laugh. So I guess it was great. I go me, just been making people laugh since the dawn of time. Megan.
Sorry, it's actually funny you mentioned that. I forgot to look at my notes before I actually spoke the first time. But I was actually going to bring up the Tilton mummy as well, and they were
Mm-hmm.
referring to it to begin with. I just thought it felt at first like such a random piece that they threw into the story. And then when I started thinking about it more, I just thought it was such a good kind of juxtaposition to everything she was trying to talk about
Mm.
for what they were trying to push for, and like advancement for making sure that, these doe cases are treated like humans and not just bones. Like it
Right.
was just I thought it was just a really interesting look at what they're trying to look at, not as like haphazard, disrespectful, but humans and
Right.
with families and stories. Um, and I thought uh, something else that was really interesting on, I think it's like 220, 223, I think, when she's talking about how great it would be if we could just do all this DNA testing and, find just let's do DNA testing. It'll be great. But, funding is the real problem with it. And that a lot of the people that are missing, they're from more marginalized communities. And she says in there, the funding isn't there for them when they're alive, let alone after they've passed. And I just thought that was such a poignant statement that, like, we were getting to that through the whole thing. And that was exactly like that one sentence just felt like it was exactly it.
Right. They're not even going to help these people when they're alive. What makes you think that
Yeah.
they can help them?
Yeah. It's
more.
now they don't have to worry more. They can just store them separately. Like I just kept thinking like it was just such a perfect kind of dehumanizing way to just set aside and not have to worry about where you have to and when somebody's alive. I don't know. I thought it was a really horrifically sad statement and
Yeah,
true.
but accurate. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I did like how she went into detail about that. I was hoping that she would bring attention to that at some point too, for sure. Angela.
Hi. So this was 3 out of 5 stars for me. It's I had some issues with it. I did really appreciate her empathy. Um I loved that she was really humanizing, especially because, um I read All the Living and the Dead recently, which I know that the book club did before I joined, and everybody was talking about how great it was. So I was like, oh, let me read it. And there's a lot of talk about that in there about how when you're around a dead body so much, it starts to just be like a dead body and you start to forget that there was a person in there. So that was fresh in my mind because I went from All the Living and the Dead to Lay Them to Rest. So um, I appreciated that about her. I thought she was just too hard on herself though.
Hmm.
Like there was so much talk about her not having the same credentials as everybody else. And like just because you're not a, you know, doctor of this or a forensic that, like she did a lot of work towards this case. And I thought she should have like been a little prouder of herself, you know. She was a little too humble.
Mm.
Um the opposite that I had with the book that Becky, I'm not good with names, was talking about, she was saying that like that one lady was like bragging on herself all the time and stuff. And yeah, and it was the opposite here. I was like, brag on yourself a little bit. Um,
I totally get what she's coming from too, though. Being surrounded by like the smartest people ever, you're just gonna be like, wow, what did I do?
yeah, like imposter syndrome, like we all have
Yeah.
it sometimes, but I wanted to be like, no, you're really great. Like,
You're the reason we know about what's going on. Like,
yeah, yeah. I was not a fan of like the super extra personal stuff. I really want to shake her editor a little bit because like maybe like half the amount of it or a third of the amount of it would have been wonderful. Just a little bit, but it was too much. Um, I also left this book feeling like I need to submit my DNA to one
yeah,
of these websites so that if I'm ever missing, they can find me.
yeah,
And my dad has done one and like, found out our heritage and all that stuff and um traced our lineage back so far. And I never ever considered it being used for this purpose. Um, and so that part, I think, other than the forensic illustration parts, were the things that were the most fascinating to me.
yeah,
Um, and I also kind of want to shake the people who run the DNA websites for not allowing them to be used in crimes.
yeah.
Because I sort of feel like if you've committed a crime, then like
Maybe don't.
maybe I don't, yeah, maybe you
Yeah,
shouldn't have done that. And then
I get it.
I get the reasoning behind it, but ugh, I feel like we could catch so many people if we could just backlog all this DNA
Totally.
testing and stuff and use that DNA there instead of like, I don't know, having integrity, I guess, or respecting people's right to privacy. I don't know.
Yeah, I've done Charlotte was asking in the chat. I have done it. You can accept the option to allow, Michelle said, yeah, for your DNA to be used by law enforcement. So you can opt in. Um, I don't remember having to do that. I did one of those years ago. Surprise, I'm white. I'm white and I'm hick. Okay. Shocking. Western European, Scottish, Scots-Irish, settled in Kentucky. Woohoo! Yay. So needed to know that. I could have guessed that
Right.
without,
My family too, were every kind of white that you could
yeah,
be,
pretty
basically.
much.
Like,
And I found
yay.
actually it was 8% Russian. I didn't know that.
Oh, that's cool.
I didn't know that. But what was weird is my grandma's mom or grandma's mom or grandma's grandma was like full-blown Hungarian, didn't speak a lick of English. But that wasn't as prominent, which is interesting because that's like closer than, anyway. But it's interesting. I mean, my mom is super cautious about it. Maybe my mom's committed a crime. Maybe that's why. I doubt it. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it gives you the option to opt out. Yeah. I get why people are nervous about it, totally. It's trust. I mean, Laura goes into that in the podcast too. There's people who don't want to do it because they don't trust people with it. Totally understand. I mean, you never know. You never know what they're gonna do. But it's solving stuff. Like we were just talking about at the beginning of the book too. We were talking in the Discord about Joseph D'Angelo, Golden State Killer. I mean, look at stuff like that. Brit, Brit.
So I just wanted to piggyback off of what Becky said when she was talking about the race thing. And I think it's like just sad that as a white writer, she would have to question whether or not it's okay to say it. Because like I read this book this month, which as you know, Patches, this is our February for our other book club.
That book is
And it was so well done. Highly recommend if you haven't read it. Highly, highly recommend. But it's done by a Black author. So she talks a lot about race. And I bet nobody blinked an eye. But because I'm sure somebody blinked an eye at Laura because she had the audacity to say that a lot of the people are Black and Hispanic or, whatever. And I just think it's sad that as a society, we're still so blinded by the fact that historically the country was extremely racist, like, and it still is that way because of what was put in place back then.
yeah.
So it just makes me sad because those people are people too. Um, and piggybacking off of the documentary that we watched that I didn't watch with the Discord, but I watched it the other day, the Mostly Name It or Mostly Harmless. Like by the time you find out all of the things that you find out about him, like it didn't matter because he was still a person. He still deserved to be found, and to that his family still deserved to know that he was missing. Sorry, my dogs are fighting. Even though like he wasn't the greatest person. And so I just think it's really sad that we still have all of these missing people and all of these families who still have no idea where they came from or who they are because of their race in
They
this
belong
country. It
to
just makes me sad.
somebody, you know?
Right. They belong to everybody. Like, and they deserve the money, they deserve the resources just like we would if a white person disappeared. And it just makes me sad. Because it's still happening. It's like, oh, it only happened in the 60s. No, it's still happening today, 2024. So it just makes me sad because I feel like we should just be so much better as people at this point.
You'd think. Yeah, that book, Madness by Antonia Hilton, I think is the name. I'm still reading it. I think I just got to page 100. I need to finish it by Thursday. It is fantastic. It is one of the hardest books I've ever read to read. I mean, absolutely devastating. It's about a Jim Crow asylum that recently closed. I mean, that place just closed in like 2004. And just horrible, horrible, horrible things happened here, and nobody talked about it. It was very reminiscent of Black Angels to me, which is like one of those pieces of history that if somebody hadn't written it, then it would have been lost completely. Pretty much one or two people in Madness are the reason that we have all of the information, similar to like Black Angels with, Virginia being the last person pretty much alive during that time period. If we didn't have these stories, we wouldn't have had this way to tell history because we don't learn about these kinds of things. Becky.
And
go ahead, Britt. No, go ahead, Britt.
I'm gonna say, just to back off the madness too, it's written so well. It's written like it's a fiction story, but it's nonfiction. Like the way she tells it is so endearing. Like, and I was talking to somebody else about it and I was like, I really enjoyed it. And he's like, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it because it's such a heavy matter. I'm like, yeah, but it didn't feel as heavy because of how she wrote it. So highly recommend.
She went to Harvard. No, you're fine. She went to Harvard, and she's clearly so freaking smart. Oh yeah, incredibly written. Go ahead, Becky.
Okay. First of all, what book club are you reading that for?
Our local one in Iredell County.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I haven't had that book on my radar, so I'm gonna add it to my list. So thank you for that.
I got you.
I forgot that I wanted to piggyback off of something the other Brit said about how all these systems are like not connected very well and everything. And I was kind of thinking about that. I think about this every time this kind of thing sort of comes up. And I think part of the reason that it's like that is the patriarchy. And I really liked that. Yep. And I don't know if men enter the arena in this book, but this is women solving this.
Yeah.
Right. It's women networking. It's women making the connections. And so I think when women are in charge, we do that better, right? We connect the dots. We don't have ego. We don't like ego doesn't come into it.
Totally.
So we ask, oh, well, I know so-and-so from so-and-so who can help us or whatever. Right. And I just had this like feedback at work. Like I've never like considered this about myself. And my boss, who is a man, said something like, well, you're just so valuable to the program because you connect the dots. You connect people to each other. And I was like, oh, I guess I do that. But I didn't. And I just think that women tend to be better at that.
Yeah.
And so I think that if women were running police departments, and things like that, then maybe there would be better connections between these systems and things like that. Yeah. Jurisdiction maybe wouldn't come into it so much.
Let the women do the work.
Seriously.
Get done.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been feeling very well, I'm not going to get into politics here, even though I'm pretty sure we are all very similar minded with everything going on lately, and I'm so tired.
Exhausting.
I'm over it. I don't like it.
Even locally. So just side note, even locally here, in Tacoma. So Tacoma is about an hour away from where I live, but basically this woman got attacked in a park, like on a walk. And so and it was just some dude like ran up on her, and you know, she had to fight him off and everything. And um it was women who came to her aid. She was screaming, yelling, everything else. And it was two other women who ran to her and helped her. And and then men showed up like in the aftermath. But one of the women who came to help her like kicked the assailant in the head and like knocked him off of her. And then he got up and ran away. And and she said something like, I think the woman who was being attacked was just like, oh my gosh, like you could have gotten hurt too, whatever. And she said, I'd kick 100 guys in the head to save you. And I just think
that's probably feel
how
really good right now.
Yeah, like I just, it's just we yes, like you were saying, like just let women do stuff. We'll take care of it. We'll figure it out. We will take care of each other.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah.
I totally would bet that anybody in this Discord, if you saw or if you heard a scream, we would all be like
1,000%.
I mean, my friend Faith and I were in Winston-Salem fairly recently, a couple months ago, and we were walking through this parking lot and we saw this guy walk up to this girl and he was asking her all these questions about parking her car, and both of us just stopped and were like,
yep.
I'm waiting until this conversation's over. I'm standing right here. And like he walked away and we asked her, like, is everything okay? And she was like, oh, yeah, he's just helping me. And we're like, okay, I'm still gonna stay right here. I'm still gonna stay right here.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna move. Okay. When the conversation's over. Yeah. I don't,
Even this is maybe more whatever. Even this is, not that traumatic, but like we were at a Chick-fil-A or something and a little girl got hurt in the play area and got hurt pretty badly, like hit her mouth on something. So there's a lot of blood. It was chaos. And all the men were just standing around like, what do we do? There's blood. What do we do?
Oh my God.
And I finally, because I was, busy. I was there with my own kids. And finally, like, I was just like, Jesus Christ, this poor mom. So I got up and I walked over there and I was like, do you need ice? Did you, right? Like, they were just standing around, So anyway, it's just sometimes whatever. It's whatever. But I think it is very frustrating that a lot of these systems don't talk to each other, and there's a lot of missed connections. And it's just unfortunately how things have been set up. But I'm not sure how to solve it. But it just seems like I
got an idea.
We could figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because now we have a homicide, right, with Susan, and we're trying to figure out what exactly happened to her. And that's something I really thought was interesting in this book was Laura's discussion of serial killers and how we've become so normalized with the idea of what a serial killer is, and we've been trained, I guess, to think when we think of serial killers, we think of like the people who are the exception, as she put it. She was saying, like Ted Bundy and all these people and Jeffrey Dahmer, like these are horrific, heinous, out of the ordinary crimes. Like you don't realize a serial killer can just be 2 to 3 people, right? So I thought it was really interesting that she said, it's silly almost to immediately assume a serial killer is capable of this, like tying it to the redhead murders. Is that what they were called? The redhead murders, I think. And because Susan was a redhead. So is that possible? It's entirely possible, sure, but it is probably not the case. A lot of the times you're murdered by somebody or somebody that, possible. And I put that in. She wanted the list of questions ahead of time, just in case, I asked anything insensitive or the family wasn't ready to talk about it. So I sent her those questions, and I wanted to talk more about, the serial killer aspect of this. And she said, as heinous as the crime against Susan was, anybody can decapitate anybody. Like this is not, unfortunately, out of the ordinary crime. And a lot of the times, people don't decapitate people out of like malice. It's typically to cover up something. It's typically to hide something that they have done. It's not because they are angry. I mean, I guess, but that's a lot of anger, right? So it's typically because they would like to obscure. So I thought that was really interesting. Um, and of course, Susan's family wants the rest of her. They want to figure out where the rest of her is, and they're working hard to get that done. And now the identified signs have turned into, unsolved homicide. I think $10,000 or something reward, and it might be more now. And actually something too about Laura is she did use some of the proceeds from the book to go towards that reward. I don't think it's 10 grand. I think it's way more than that. Anyway, Ashley. Hello, dear. Welcome, welcome. I forgot to text you. I'm so sorry. You are muted in case
No,
there you go.
yeah, no, it's fine. I totally did, and it wasn't that I forgot. It was that I got caught up in what I was doing, but I'm here now.
Welcome,
So
welcome.
I was like, crap, book club, not again.
I know. We started and I was like, oh shit, I didn't text Ashley.
So I almost finished the podcast episode
Thank you, thank you.
that you released, and it was fantastic. But you're right, when you were saying that people, I mean, yes, it happens, but it's not usually done, the dismemberment's not usually done out of malice. It's either done to hide what they're doing, or it's also done for necessity because I mean, if you're taking trash out to your car in a single bag, that is a lot less conspicuous than trying to carry a rug out to your car that
Sure.
really looks kind of heavy.
Yeah.
So
Easily to
and I found it,
carry.
yeah, exactly. And it's easy to hide it as well. And then if you're trying to your spread it out to where it's harder to be caught, then it's also easier to do it that way. But what I found really interesting is that, like you were saying, the fact that you said that serial killers are not as prevalent and common as we would automatically assume.
Right.
And I like how Laura talked even about in the golden age of serial killers when it seemed like there was a new one popping up, every other week, that even those people that we know that unfortunately are household names now were very odd in what was going on. And so I think Laura did a great job in the book in being able to have Susan come off as a human and not as remains, right? Because it's not like she was saying, Amy has her students, realize that as they're transporting or moving these sets of bones around, that this was a person. It still is a person, and they still deserve, the basic human rights that we give anyone else who's walking around, because they didn't choose that to happen to them, and they deserve to still have those basic human rights protected and respected. So I really enjoyed how I really admired how she brought the human aspect into the cold case and cold cases to remind us as readers, yes, it may be remains and they may no longer be with us, but they were still human beings and still deserve to be treated as such.
Totally. And how eerie was it, that dream that I think one of the sisters had, where she
Oh my gosh, yes.
saw, remind me, was it the dad or somebody that was like, she's here with me, or I'm gonna stay here in the woods or something like that? Like,
yeah, I think that's what it was, if I'm remembering correctly. And that was just, it was eerie,
yeah,
right?
totally.
Because I believe eerie things happen. I mean, that's just how I feel, my experience, books we read, all this pain and anger in the world has to go somewhere.
Sure.
And so the fact that, that was called out, and when you think about it, loved ones, um, kids saying, well, I just talked to grandma last night when grandma passed away in the middle of the night, right? And so I really admired the stance and the way that she wrote about Susan.
Totally.
And the other cases, especially the mummy that was in the school. Like that was I'm like, wait a minute, what? We're not going to circle back to that. And then she circled back to it eventually later on in the book. But I think I texted you. I'm like, we're just going to go right past this. Like she didn't just say there was a mummy found in the kids' school. We're just
Yeah.
not going to go back.
Yeah, and
But yeah,
I think I don't know if you're at that part of the podcast yet, but she said there's too much resin on the body to even try to begin
yeah,
to identify who it is, which is just infuriating.
sad. Yeah. But that's my thoughts.
Oh, okay. Thanks for coming. It is 8:15 or so Eastern time. Does anybody have any other thoughts? I did want to share something with y'all that is completely unrelated, but not necessarily unrelated. I did post this on Instagram. I don't know who all has been here since we talked about Radium Girls, but this was the coolest thing that I purchased. I went to the Oddities and Curiosity. I don't know if anybody's been to the Oddities and Curiosities Festival. I just went to the one in Charlotte. Um, and I did purchase a 1920s, late 1920s clock where the dials are in fact painted. This is legitimate. This is the West Clocks Baby Ben, so yeah, circa late 1920s Radium Girls clock. And if you shine a black light on it, the dials kind of light up, which really shows the authenticity of it because the paint has worn. But the booth that I went, she had some of the pocket watches that they were painting for the soldiers, which I thought was fascinating. It does work. I have not tinkered with it too much. I'm kind of scared to. Right now, it's just like a really cool paperweight. But yeah, if you haven't read Radium Girls, you totally should. Speaking of women, it's really fascinating. There's got like an alarm switch here at the top. I guess I can. She said it still works, but I talked to her for like a half an hour. I swear she was like, "I'm so happy that somebody else knows about Radium Girls." I'm like, "Yeah." Oh, you're waiting for my copy, Radium Girls? I'm so glad you asked. I have two. Which one do you want? Hardcover, paperback? I will make sure to bring it. Um, we. Oh, I see it. We are gonna hop on. Does anybody have any last minute thoughts? If not, we will hop on over to the palette cleanser and talk about something lighthearted, please. I'm so glad that everybody, for the most part, liked this book. I guess I should talk about next month. Where? Oh. Next month, we are reading Pathogenesis by Jonathan Kennedy. Very excited. I am chatting with him on March 15th. If you want me to ask any questions to Jonathan, please let me know sooner than later so I can ask him. You guys had some really good questions for Laura, and you also had really good questions for Megan. But I will be talking to him on March 15th. I have not started it yet. I think it's right behind me.
So I've started it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Where did that come from?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I picked it up last night and I'm like, well, let me just read the introduction because I'm so worried that this book's gonna make me feel so stupid.
Please tell me it doesn't.
Like, no, I mean the beginning of the introduction, I'm actually enjoying it. I'm like, oh, whoa, whoa. So that's kind of my reaction so far right now. But I'm excited to get into it, but I am so worried it's gonna make me feel so dumb.
Yeah, same. Same.
And I'm not reading it on my Kindle, so I have the physical copy from the library, which means I actually have to look up the words. I can't just like highlight it in the Kindle, say, "Oh, this is what it means, stupid." So...
I know. You're not stupid. Listen, we chose different paths in life. Also, Christina's not here to admire, but the reference section is chunky. We like a chunky
I went there
reference
first.
section.
Yes.
The first reference is Sigmund Freud.
Yes, it is.
Great. All right. Yeah, he teaches politics and global health at Queen Mary University of London, and he has a PhD in sociology from the University of Cambridge. And I have a film degree from Western Carolina University. Erica.
I couldn't wait and I read it. And I have a science background, but I think it's written in a way that it won't make anybody feel stupid. It's very readable. And I just absolutely loved it. I've been talking about it nonstop.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, this is a history of the world in 8 plagues. We're circling back to our plague era.
And his voice is amazing because he reads the audiobook And somebody put in the chat that they're waiting to hear his voice, and his voice is wonderful.
His voice is wonderful. I'm not trying to be that person, but like I was so happy to see that he also did the audiobook because I was like, pressing the headphones closer. Yeah, he's got this wonderful accent, and I'm I'm so excited.
So now I'm going to be downloading the audiobook because
Yeah. I used to credit.
It's read by the author. I love books that are read by the author.
Yeah, no, I do too. I do too. I was actually oh no, never mind. No, there was another book I read recently that I was surprised that the author didn't read. But yeah, he does it. I used an Audible credit. Um, I'm excited. So I think my concern is I was looking at some of the reviews that like not reviews on Goodreads, but like articles that have been written about it, where people were getting into like a lot of geopolitical stuff with it, and I got very nervous because I'm not as bright with that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna hop off the lives and we can chat. And let me stop recording. Recording stop.